What would you do if, while going about your routine, you notice someone struggling in the shadows? Someone whose exhaustion, whose quiet desperation, was almost invisible to the world. Would you stop, offer help, or would you convince yourself that it wasn't your place to intervene? One evening, Keanu Reeves encountered a young mother in a dimly lit supermarket parking lot. Her old sedan packed with worn blankets and scattered belongings. A baby's faint cry echoed through the cold night air, stirring something deep within him. Could she really be living there, surviving each night in that cramped space? He could have walked away, but instead he made a choice, one that would not only change her life but reaffirm the power of a single act of kindness. Before we continue this story, let us know where you are watching from. If you like stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. Keanu Reeves stood in the supermarket parking lot under the dim glow of overhead lights, a small grocery bag in hand. The night air was crisp, and a soft breeze made the nearby trees sway. He had come here for basic errands after finishing an earlier-than-expected filming schedule. The rhythmic hum of vehicles on the distant highway felt oddly peaceful. In these unassuming places, stores, parking lots, checkout lines, he found a semblance of normalcy that fame often denied him. As he made his way toward his car, a movement caught his attention. Parked at the far corner of the lot was an old sedan that looked as though it had seen decades of wear. The side windows were fogged, and a few garments hung inside, swaying gently in the breeze. Something about the scene seemed off, and Keanu felt a pang of concern. Off to one side, near a line of trolleys, he noticed a young woman collecting stray carts. She wore clothes that appeared threadbare, and her body language betrayed both exhaustion and anxiety. She kept glancing around, as if making sure no one lingered too long in her vicinity. Keanu's gaze shifted back to the sedan. Its body bore scratches, dents, and rust patches. The angle suggested it might also be laden with possessions. An uneasy intuition took hold of him. Could this woman be living in that car? He stepped closer, careful not to alarm her, and gently called out, "Hey, are you all right?" Startled, she spun around, gripping the cart handle as if it were a shield. "I'm fine," she replied tersely, shifting her feet and refusing to meet his eyes. Something in her guarded tone spoke volumes, as though she had grown accustomed to fending off questions. Keanu raised his free hand, palm outward in a gesture of harmlessness. "No worries," he said kindly. "I just wanted to see if you needed anything." Her face tightened, her lips pressed together. "I'm good, thanks," she managed, inching away. Within seconds, she moved toward the battered sedan, opened the door, and slipped inside. Through the hazy windshield, Keanu made out the faint outline of a child's car seat. The faint cry of a baby soon followed, echoing in the stillness of the parking lot. His heart sank. A mother with an infant, living in a car, struggling in the cold. The realization that they were alone at this hour troubled him deeply. Taking a step back, he wondered how best to approach the situation without spooking her. He knew direct offers of help could sometimes be met with suspicion or shame, especially from someone who had grown used to surviving on her own. Ultimately, he returned to his own vehicle, but not without a heavy feeling in his chest. As he started his engine, he caught one last glance of the sedan's foggy rear window, clothes draped along the back seat, and a small silhouette of a baby's head. He let out a quiet sigh, resolved that he couldn't simply walk away from what he had witnessed. The following morning, Keanu found himself heading to the same supermarket, a sense of purpose guiding him. After he parked, his eyes swept the lot until they settled on that same sedan. It was still there, in the very same spot, the windows again fogged. He had brought along a couple of items, a fresh blanket in its original packaging and a few sealed bottles of water. Approaching the car with care, he placed the items gently on the hood. He didn't knock or call out. He simply left them in plain view, hoping it might help without embarrassing the young mother. Retreating a safe distance, he slipped into his own car and watched. A few minutes later, the sedan's door cracked open, and the woman peered out warily. Spotting the blanket and water, she cast anxious looks around the lot. Her posture hinted at indecision, as if she debated whether accepting the items was safe or wise. Eventually, though, she snatched them and ducked back inside, out of sight. Keanu exhaled, relief mingling with concern. He knew a small gift could only go so far. All the same, it was a start. She hadn't thrown them away or run, which meant there was some willingness to receive help. On the third day, he returned once more. He found her leaning against the sedan with a tired expression, the baby stirring restlessly from within. Summoning his gentlest tone, he introduced himself again. "I'm the guy who left the blanket," he said softly, keeping a respectful distance. She stiffened, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "Why?" she demanded, her voice sharp with underlying vulnerability. "Because I saw you might need them," he answered. "I don't want to intrude, but I have some extra baby supplies, diapers, formula, anything you might be short on." She seemed torn. The rational part of her wanted to refuse, to maintain whatever pride she had left. But as soon as the baby's muffled cry reached her ears, her face softened. "I need milk for him," she admitted quietly, eyes darting away. Keanu wasted no time. He disappeared into the store and soon returned with infant formula, some diapers, and baby wipes. She accepted them, hands trembling, mumbling a subdued "thank you." As he walked back to his car, he heard her murmuring to the baby. The tone was tender and weary. Something about it tugged at his heart. He realized he was no longer a bystander to a stranger's plight. He had become an ally, if only in a small way. Though he couldn't yet see how, he felt certain that the course of both their lives was about to change in ways neither could anticipate. Keanu Reeves awoke the next morning with a mind that refused to leave behind the image of that weary mother and her infant. He remembered every detail, the old sedan's rusted sides, the mismatched blankets, the baby's faint cry in the cold. A subtle conviction formed in him. He wouldn't allow her to remain in such dire straits without at least attempting a more substantial form of support. Carrying a few more essentials, baby formula, small toys, fresh blankets, he drove to the same parking lot. Like before, the sedan was there, parked in the same lonely corner. But this time, the woman stood outside the car, rocking the baby in her arms as though his restlessness had forced her out into the open. Keanu approached slowly. "Hi," he greeted, voice kept calm to avoid startling her. She met his gaze with tired eyes, an expression that teetered between wary and hopeful. I never got your name," he said tentatively. She paused. "Emily," she replied, her voice softer than before. He noticed she kept Oliver, the baby, tucked close, as though shielding him from the world. "That's a lovely name," Keanu remarked. "And your little one?" She glanced at the baby. "His name is Oliver," she said, the faintest ghost of a smile crossing her face. Keanu nodded. "That's a strong name. May I?" He held up the small bag of items he'd brought. "I wasn't sure what you needed most, but I did grab some more formula. Also diapers, wipes, and a toy or two. No pressure, but they're here if you want them." Emily hesitated, shifting Oliver from one arm to the other. The tension in her posture suggested a battle inside, pride or trust. But eventually, she exhaled, stepping forward to accept the bag. "Thank you," she whispered, voice caught in that fragile space between relief and embarrassment. They settled on the curb near her car, and Keanu made sure to leave enough room so she wouldn't feel trapped. Once she set Oliver down on a makeshift seat of blankets, she admitted, "I'm not used to taking help from strangers, but I don't have much choice now." Keanu gave a gentle shrug. "We all need help at some point. Life isn't meant to be navigated alone." For a moment, Emily looked as if she might refute that, but instead she bit her lip, eyes watering slightly. "It's been hard. I lost my home after, well, a lot happened. I tried staying with friends, but it never worked out. Then I tried to find stable work, but nobody wants to hire someone who can't guarantee childcare." She paused, cheeks flushing as she realized how much she was revealing. "The car, it's all I have left." Keanu allowed her the space to speak, only interjecting to nod or offer a sympathetic look. He sensed she needed to unburden herself, to have someone simply listen without judgment. He discovered that she had once held a full-time job, but lost it during a downturn. Debt, personal upheaval, and the arrival of a baby combined into a storm she hadn't been able to weather. Each day, I gather these carts, she explained, gesturing at the near-empty lot. The supermarket manager lets me do it for a small amount of cash, off the books. It's enough for some baby essentials and a meal here and there. Her tone was weary but resolute. But the nights are always the worst. It's so cold, even with blankets. Keanu's throat tightened, imagining her sitting in that cramped car with a baby at night, uncertain of tomorrow, was almost too heartbreaking to bear. He inhaled deeply, knowing an impulsive offer might scare her off, but also aware that intangible gestures could only go so far. "I'd like to help," he said carefully, "but I understand if that feels uncomfortable. Would you let me put you and Oliver in a motel room for a few nights? Just so you can rest. Maybe figure out a plan without worrying about the cold." Emily shook her head at first, her eyes flicking down. "I can't pay you back," she whispered, hugging Oliver closer. Keanu's voice softened further. "I'm not asking for anything in return. I just can't walk away knowing you're out here. A warm room, a proper bed. Both of you deserve that at the very least." She studied him as if trying to detect any hidden motives. He remained unwavering, his gaze compassionate but never pitying. Finally, she exhaled in defeat or acceptance, maybe both. "All right," she agreed, tears clinging to her lashes. "Just for a few days. I need to keep working and eventually figure out a longer-term solution." He nodded. "Of course. Let's start small," he said, rising to his feet. She followed suit, Oliver fussing in her arms. "Can you follow me in your car to the motel?" he asked. "I'll take care of everything for now." There was a flicker of embarrassment in her expression, but she managed a faint nod. "Yes, thank you," she murmured. "I don't even know your name." He hesitated, momentarily realizing the strangeness of not having introduced himself properly. "Keanu," he answered, offering a small smile. "It's nice to meet you, Emily." Him in a more modest car than people might expect from a movie star. Leading the way to a nearby motel, he felt an inexplicable sense of relief. This was no permanent solution, of course, but it was a beginning. If nothing else, he could grant her a few nights of warmth and a bit of safety, and from there, perhaps he could help her navigate a path out of this dire situation. They arrived at a modest roadside motel framed by flickering neon lights. Though hardly luxurious, it was warm, clean, and more secure than the cramped sedan. Keanu went inside first, paying for several nights without making a fuss. The receptionist, hardly believing she was speaking to Keanu Reeves, processed the request as discreetly as she could. Once the key was in his hand, he guided Emily and Oliver to the small room near the end of a long exterior corridor. He opened the door to reveal two simple beds, a lamp with a yellowish glow, and a closet that squeaked when pulled open. A small heater vent hummed near the window, offering respite from the biting cold. Emily's gaze swept the space, tears gathering in her eyes. I can't tell you how this feels," she confessed, her voice shaky. "Just to have somewhere safe for him to sleep." Keanu passed her the room key, keeping his tone gentle. "Get settled in. I'll make a quick run to pick up some groceries, in case you need formula, snacks, or anything else." She clutched Oliver against her chest. "Thank you," she whispered, not trusting her voice to say more without breaking. Within a couple of hours, Keanu returned with a small bounty of provisions. Milk, cereals, baby-safe food, diapers, plus a few items that might spark a hint of comfort. A fluffy blanket, a teddy bear for Oliver, and some toiletries for Emily. She accepted them, offering a hesitant smile that carried more than just gratitude. Perhaps it was the beginning of trust. That evening, Emily and Oliver slept soundly for the first time in months without the drone of traffic or the piercing cold nipping at their fingers. Meanwhile, Keanu settled into his own routine. He made phone calls to acquaintances who ran community outreach programs and shelters, explaining Emily's predicament without using her name to respect her privacy. He also set an appointment with a trusted friend who worked a local nonprofit, someone who could help Emily with job placement and possibly secure more stable housing. The next morning, he knocked lightly on Emily's motel door. She answered, Oliver in her arms, looking a little less haggard. "Good morning," he greeted. "I've got a friend who might help with resources. Would you be up for meeting them?" Her grip on the doorknob tightened. I don't want to get stuck in some social services maze," she said, weariness rolling off her words. "I tried that in another county. Endless paperwork, waiting lists, no real help." Keanu nodded sympathetically. "I understand. This is different. My friend heads a nonprofit that focuses on immediate solutions, temporary housing, job training, childcare connections. It might be a chance to build something more stable." She glanced at Oliver, dozing in her arms. A flicker of determination lit her eyes. "All right, I'll talk to them," she agreed, quietly resigning herself to the possibility of vulnerability once again. That afternoon, Keanu and Emily stepped into a modest office building where a woman named Rosa greeted them in the lobby. Rosa, tall with warm eyes and an assured demeanor, immediately welcomed Emily and Oliver with open arms. As they settled into a small meeting room, Rosa asked gentle questions about Emily's past work experience, her current needs, potential references. No judgment colored her voice, only practical compassion. Emily answered haltingly at first, but gradually revealed more of her background. How she'd held down a receptionist job until personal crises led to her termination. How she'd been forced to use every last penny to keep Oliver fed, eventually spiraling into homelessness. Rosa listened, offering feasible steps instead of pity. "We can possibly place you in a transitional living program," she explained. "You have a safe place to stay. And we'd work on childcare for Oliver so you can job hunt properly." Emily's eyes brimmed with tears. "I've been trying to do everything on my own," she admitted. "But I need help." "You deserve help," Rosa said gently. "And you'll pay it forward when you can. We're all in this together." Keanu, seated off to the side, felt a swell of relief. This was precisely the kind of solution he had hoped to facilitate. One that didn't leave Emily dependent on fleeting charity, but instead set her on a path toward independence. The meeting concluded with an action plan. Emily would finalize paperwork for the transitional program and start exploring stable job listings. In the meantime, Rosa's nonprofit would help cover short-term childcare costs, bridging the gap until she could stand on her own feet. As they walked back to the motel, Emily remained quiet, Oliver asleep in his stroller. Finally, she turned to Keanu. "I don't know why you're doing all this. You don't owe me anything. No one else is stepping in, so why not me?" She let out a sigh that mixed exasperation and gratitude. "Maybe it's time for that to change," he said softly, his tone encouraging. "Because you and Oliver deserve good things. You're working hard. You're not giving up. That, to me, is courage." A faint blush tinted Emily's cheeks, but she mustered a hesitant nod. "Thank you," she murmured, voice trembling with unspent emotion. Together, they crossed the parking lot toward her motel room. The crunch of gravel underfoot. The day's late sun cast elongated shadows on the asphalt, signifying both a closing of old chapters and the start of something new. For Emily, the path forward remained daunting, but for the first time in a long while, she wasn't traversing alone. In the weeks that followed, Emily began the tentative process of rebuilding her life. She transitioned from the motel to a small unit provided through the nonprofit, a furnished space shared with another single mother. Though it wasn't large or luxurious, it offered far more stability than a car seat in a frigid parking lot. The community atmosphere within the transitional complex also gave her the chance to meet others who had faced similar struggles, offering camaraderie and mutual support. Keanu Reeves, true to his word, stayed in contact without hovering. He recognized that Emily needed independence as much as assistance. He helped set up interviews where possible, introducing her discreetly to acquaintances who might be willing to give a motivated young woman a shot. At the same time, he avoided anything that felt like charity. When Emily secured a part-time position at a local office, primarily organizing paperwork, he was discreetly elated. She had done it on her own merit, with only a gentle nudge from him in the background. Rosa's nonprofit handled childcare arrangements, allowing Emily to leave Oliver in a safe, nurturing environment during work hours. Each new day brought a minor victory, a successful shift at her new job, an encouraging note from her supervisor, Oliver's improved health from better living conditions. Emily still looked drained at times, grappling with residual trauma and a lingering fear that it could all vanish. Yet she pressed on, bolstered by a newfound sense of purpose. One evening, Keanu found himself invited to a small gathering at the community's main hall. The nonprofit hosted monthly potlucks where families shared meals, success stories, and laughter. Walking in, he noticed instantly how the environment brimmed with warmth. Children raced around tables, giggling freely, while parents discussed job leads or offered each other emotional support. Emily, perched on a folding chair in the corner, spotted him and waved shyly. He approached, carefully balancing a casserole dish he'd brought. An attempt at cooking that, he joked, might be questionable at best. Emily laughed softly, a sound he hadn't heard from her before. For a moment, she resembled any other young mother in the midst of a normal, everyday social event. That was precisely the point. Normalcy, a life with more hope than despair. Seated around a table with a few other residents, Emily recounted recent developments. Oliver's been sleeping through the night. Now that we're not in the car, she said, smiling at Keanu. And I've saved a bit from my paychecks. It's small, but it's a start. An older woman named Teresa patted Emily's hand. When I first got here, I had nothing but 2 suitcases. Now I manage a small bakery. You'll be surprised how quickly your life can change if you keep pushing forward. The conversation turned to stories of perseverance. Parents who had rebuilt their lives after losing jobs, suffering illness, or enduring tragedy. Though overshadowed by heartbreak, each account ended with a testament to the power of communal support. Keanu listened, deeply moved. His role might be a footnote in their narratives, but seeing the broader scope of how people rose above adversity filled him with gratitude. After the potluck, as dusk settled in, Keanu walked with Emily toward the entrance of her unit. Oliver, snoozing in her arms, clutched a tiny stuffed bear. She paused, turning to face him. I need to say this, she began, voice trembling with sincerity. You changed our lives. I don't have words to express how it feels to see him safe and well. He held up a hand, modest as ever. I only opened a few doors. You're the one walking through them. Don't give me too much credit. Besides, he added with a playful grin, my cooking still needs serious work. She cracked a genuine smile at that. Then a more serious look crossed her face. I want to pay it forward, she confessed. One day, I'd like to do for someone else what you did for me. I'm not there yet, but it's on my heart. Keanu's eyes glimmered with pride. That's the best outcome I could ever hope for. That kindness continues, one person to the next. You'll do great things, Emily. I truly believe it. Before he left, they lingered momentarily in a comfortable silence, that unspoken bond of trust and friendship forging stronger ties. The battered sedan that once served as her home was gone, donated through the nonprofit to a scrapyard, replaced by reliable public transport passes for now. An uncertain future still lay ahead, but the immediate crisis was over, and a horizon of possibilities glowed in the distance. Driving away, Keanu Reeves found himself thinking of how unpredictable life could be. A mundane grocery trip had led him to discover a mother and child in need, culminating in a chain reaction of compassion. Sometimes, that was all it took, a fleeting moment of awareness that bloomed into tangible change. As he pressed on the accelerator, a profound sense of humility and awe accompanied him. This journey wasn't just Emily and Oliver's story. It was his too, an enduring reminder that empathy, when acted upon, could transform hardship into hope. Over the following months, Emily continued to flourish in her new environment. With a steadier income, she managed to save up enough to move into a small rental apartment not far from her workplace. A modest but comfortable space that offered privacy and independence. Oliver was growing fast, babbling and crawling with boundless curiosity. Each time Keanu Reeves stopped by for a visit, never unannounced, always respectful, he marveled at the transformation. The fragile mother he'd first encountered in a supermarket parking lot now stood with shoulders squared, eyes bright, and a heart ready to embrace the future. Despite the progress, life wasn't perfect. Emily navigated everyday stresses, from budgeting her limited funds to juggling childcare whenever her office extended her hours. Yet each challenge felt surmountable, buoyed by the safety net of community resources and friends she'd made at the nonprofit. Most importantly, she had replaced despair with resilience. One evening, as she was finishing dinner with Oliver, her phone buzzed. It was Keanu, asking politely if he could drop by. Within half an hour, he arrived at her doorstep, carrying a small bag of groceries, a new habit that she tried to discourage, though he teased that it was just a little extra. They chatted about how Oliver was adjusting to daycare, and how she was learning new software at her office job to increase her responsibilities. Emily admitted that she sometimes woke up at night, plagued by nightmares of returning to the car. "I'll see Oliver crying in the back seat, cold and hungry, and I can't do anything about it," she explained, voice trembling slightly. Keanu listened, empathy shining in his eyes. "Trauma doesn't vanish overnight," he said gently. "Have you considered speaking with a counselor? Sometimes professional help can do wonders." She nodded, confessing she'd been hesitant, unsure of the cost. He mentioned that Rose's nonprofit had a partnership with a mental health service, offering low-cost or sometimes free sessions. "I think you should look into it," he encouraged. "Not just for you, but for Oliver too. You deserve to heal fully." As they continued talking, Oliver toddled across the small living room, clutching a stuffed toy in his tiny hands. Emily scooped him up, and the baby let out a gurgling laugh. The sound was contagious, filling the room with a sweetness that belied the hardships they had overcome. When Oliver reached for Keanu, Emily raised an eyebrow, half joking, half curious. "Looks like he's gotten attached to you," she said. Keanu grinned, letting the baby grab his finger. "What can I say? He's my new buddy." In that moment, Emily realized how truly unusual and extraordinary it was for a global celebrity to become so invested in helping a stranger. She had learned bits and pieces of Keanu's background, how he remained down-to-earth despite his fame, quietly contributing to charitable causes. Still, to witness it firsthand was startling. "I never asked you," she began softly, "why you cared so much when you barely knew me." He leaned back in his chair, contemplating. "Because I've experienced loss, seen people slip through the cracks," he answered at length. "And if I can prevent that for even one person, it's worth trying. When I saw you in that parking lot, I just couldn't ignore it." Emily smiled, eyes misting. "Sometimes I think about how easily you could have walked away. Anyone else might have. But I'm not anyone else," he said gently. "And neither are you. You're stronger than you realize." In the following weeks, Emily attended counseling sessions, gradually processing the grief and fear that had haunted her since becoming homeless. She channeled her newfound emotional clarity into her work, impressing her supervisor enough that they offered her a chance to train for a full-time position. The day she received that promotion, she called Keanu in tears of joy, struggling to form words. He met her after work with a simple bouquet of flowers, joking that every promotion needs a bouquet, right? Under the warm glow of streetlights, they chatted about her plans for the future, getting a stable car, maybe enrolling in night classes for additional skills. She also expressed an interest in volunteering with Rose's nonprofit, helping other homeless mothers find resources and keep their families intact. "I remember feeling so alone," Emily explained. "And if I can be the person who steps in, like you did for me, maybe I can break that cycle for someone else." Keanu nodded with pride. "That's exactly the ripple effect the world needs," he said. "One act of compassion, and soon everyone's passing it on." Eventually, the time came for him to quietly step back, trusting that Emily had the tools and the foundation to forge her own path. They stayed in touch, but less frequently, as she needed the space to stand on her own. Still, the bond they'd formed remained, a quiet testament to the power of kindness shared by two strangers who refused to let adversity define them. On a crisp morning, when the sun broke through the clouds in brilliant rays, Emily found herself sitting in her modest apartment, Oliver napping peacefully, a letter of acceptance for night classes in her hand. She felt a surge of gratitude for everything that had transpired. The stinging cold nights in her sedan, the unexpected meeting with Keanu Reeves, the help from Rose's nonprofit, and her own unyielding determination. There was still a long road ahead. But now the horizon looked dazzling with promise, and she and Oliver would face it standing tall. Emily's journey from a frigid parking lot to a stable apartment was one of quiet resilience, made possible by a single decision from Keanu Reeves to pause and see the person behind the struggle. In offering practical help and unwavering encouragement, he showed that genuine kindness doesn't require fanfare or grand announcements. It thrives in the simplest acts of empathy when the world's gaze is elsewhere. For Emily, receiving support without judgment allowed her to reclaim a life she once feared was lost. The safety net of a nonprofit, combined with her own determination, turned fleeting charity into a stepping stone toward independence. Their shared story underscores how easily someone can slip into hardship and how powerful even a modest intervention can be. With shelter secured and daily survival no longer a crushing worry, Emily could reconnect with her goals and aspirations, returning to the workforce, securing childcare for Oliver, and ultimately planning night classes to broaden her future opportunities. Keanu's role, though pivotal, was one piece in the puzzle of her recovery. By connecting Emily to broader community resources, he empowered her to continue the transformation on her own terms. The ripple effect extended beyond them both. Witnessing such compassion inspired others in the transitional community to believe that turning their lives around was not merely a dream. Emily, now hopeful and resolute, aims to pass along that same empathy, vowing to help fellow mothers who find themselves in the same dire circumstances she once knew too well. In the end, a moment of noticing, a single willingness to act, laid the foundation for renewed hope and stability. That simple truth, that compassion, given without expectation, can alter the course of a life, remains the heart of this story, offering a guiding light for anyone who might wonder if one small deed can truly make a difference.